Welcome to SMC Promise Information Seminar. Thank you for being here. My name is Josh Casillas from the Welcome Center at Santa Monica College. The Welcome Center is located on the first floor of the main SSC building on the main campus. Um, our call number is 310-434-8101, or you can email us welcomecenter@smc.edu. I'm here with my colleague. If you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Hello, my name is Angela. I am the administrative assistant at the Welcome Center, and I'll help facilitate today's Promise seminar and the chat.
Thank you, Angela, and thank you all for being here. This is really helpful. So, our information seminar agenda is here. We introduced ourselves. What is SMCP? We call it SMCP in short, is SMC Promise. Checking your SMCP or SMC Promise status, program requirements, benefits, how to regain eligibility, special consideration, and the last half of this seminar is questions and answers. If you do have any questions, please put them in the chat, in the general chat. At the end of the seminar, we will let you know, not at the end, excuse me, at the end of the slideshow, we will let you know when to do so. If you have a question that is private, you can send it to one of us, Angela Lee or myself in private, but we won't be able to answer them until after the slideshow is over. Let's move on here, Angela. Thank you. All right, what is SMC Promise? Be familiar with that badge, the little badge, that little icon there. All right, the SMC Promise, or the Santa Monica College Promise, we call it SMCP, is a collection of benefits that potentially provide you up to 2 years of free college for California residents, AB 540 students who are recent California high school graduates, GED graduates, and who are directly attending SMC as a first year college student. Students must meet the basic eligibility criteria, opt in, and complete the SMC Promise requirements to receive benefits. Perfect. Anything you'd like to add here, Angela? It's pretty straightforward, eh? Thank you. All right, we're gonna SMC Promise basic eligibility criteria. We kind of went over that in the last slide, but let's go into it a bit more in detail. All right. So the basic eligibility criteria, if you're everybody here is already meeting the basic eligibility criteria, or everybody that received an invite. You graduated from a public or private California high school or received a GED in 2025 or 2026, you're a California resident or an AB 540 student, you're attending SMC as a first year college student and you never attended college before. If that happens, you get an opt-in message, which looks here with the gray banner, this little message. That's what students get when they meet the basic eligibility criteria to opt in to the SMC Promise. The yellow arrow that's pointing to us as join SMC Promise. You click on it and then you opt in. There are some students that were invited that haven't opted in, um, but when you click on that, it gives you all the overview of opting in. The opt-in date deadline for this spring semester is March 1st. You just need to opt in one time. And once you do opt in, that's it. You can continue on your semesters. You don't have to opt in, but you do have to meet the requirements. Anything you'd like to add to this, Angela? One?
Mm, nope.
You're funny. Thank you. All right. Checking your Coursera Connect SMC Promise eligibility. This is really important. Everything about your SMC Promise is on your Coursera Connect on the SMC Promise button. First thing you're going to do when you log in is make sure you are under spring 2026 semester. That's the most important thing when you log in. So you get the correct information for this upcoming spring 2026 semester. So the way when you log in, there's when you log in and you're meeting the basic eligibility criteria, once again, the first step you have to do is opt in, and this is what it will look like in its entirety. When you do log in, this is what it looks like on Coursera Connect. You get a window before you can navigate or go any further if you meet the basic eligibility criteria for SMC Promise. Where the yellow arrow is, you click on join, and then there's a couple screens. You read it over the information, then you opt in and join the SMC Promise for this spring 2026 semester. Once again, you only need to opt in once. Once you opt in, your eligibility stays within the system, but you have to meet the requirements. And we'll go into the requirements in a future slide. Thank you, Angela. So once you do opt in, it opens up your message board here, your Coursera Connect platform. There's two methods to get your SMC Promise. The first one is on the index on the left-hand side. We put a yellow arrow there. You can click on that where it says SMC Promise. That's like the main index. Click on that. It takes you to the SMC Promise platform for your through your Coursera Connect, or on the yellow arrow on the bottom right-hand side where these six boxes are with the gray banners on top. You can click on that one. It says SMC Promise, check status, learn more. Click on that and it takes you to your SMC Promise page on your Coursera Connect. All right. So this student has opted in and they're because they met the basic eligibility criteria and they are eligible now that they opted in. Okay, so we're going to focus on the top portion. This is what it looks like on your SMC Promise on Coursera Connect, where the yellow arrow is. There's three icons in each section. All right, it gives you all your information real time on there. So the first icon is a green or red box. Okay, green means go, means you completed it. The second area is eligible. It'll give you a verbal. You're eligible. That means you're eligible and you to be part of the SMC Promise, but you have to meet requirements, right? So if you go in the third section here, it gives you a brief overview of your status. For example, this student states you are currently eligible for the SMC Promise for the spring 2026, but still need to complete and maintain the requirements below to receive benefits. You are currently responsible for your enrollment and student fees. So this student, as we quickly glance down below, there's two red boxes and two incompletes. The first one's for financial aid, the second one's for enrolled in units. So this student is not meeting the requirements, so they don't receive the benefits. So what is telling them really important, it says they need to pay for their enrollment and student fees at this point in time, right? They're responsible for that. So we always try to get students to complete their requirements before the payment deadline for each semester so they don't have to pay out of pocket and then worry about a refund, etc., etc. We'll go into that in a future slide. But this is the basic overview of your SMC Promise on Coursera Connect. Anything you'd like to add to this, Angela?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next slide. All right, so this is a student who is ineligible. So we just captured the top portion of the last screenshot that you saw from Coursera Connect SMC Promise. As you can see, there's a red icon, and then it says ineligible, and the student's message is saying they're no longer eligible for the spring as they didn't complete the requirements below. Usually, students will get this message after the requirement deadline. Okay. So if a student doesn't meet the requirements at the requirement deadline, it changes. Once again, it's real time on your Coursera Connect. All your information is real. So it's telling the student that they owe their student fees and they may qualify to regain eligibility, which we'll talk about in a future slide. Please contact the Welcome Center if they have further questions. Everybody that's attending or attends these seminars really gets a good grasp of their SMC Promise and what to look for because we go over their Coursera Connect. And all they have to really do is concentrate and focus on completing their classes, and we do the rest of the lifting for them, so to speak. Let's move on to the next slide, Angela, please. All right, SMC Promise program requirements. Let's go into that. And this is the nitty-gritty of it, so to speak. There's two requirements, okay? Once a student has opted in, once again, the requirement opt-in deadline for this spring 2026 semester is March 1st. Got to opt in before that date, otherwise you're not going to be eligible for SMC Promise, all right? Second thing is, once you are eligible, there's two requirements that need to be met. Financial aid and enroll in your unit requirement. Pretty straightforward, okay? We're going to go in details in the future, in the next slide, actually. We're going to start out with the financial aid, how it looks on your Coursera Connect, and what the requirement is. Thank you, Angela. All right. The financial aid requirement. You need to complete your for this spring 2026 semester, you need to complete your 2025, 2026 FAFSA or DREAM Act applications must be completed annually, usually before the beginning of the student's first semester of attendance of the new academic year to qualify for the SMC Promise benefits. It must be received by the SMC Financial Aid Office prior to the SMC Promise deadline. That's a lot in there. What it's basically telling you is Once you have opted in and you're eligible for SMC Promise, the first requirement is financial aid. You need to complete your 2025-2026 financial aid FAFSA or DREAM Act application. When you're applying for that FAFSA or DREAM Act, you have to put Santa Monica College information on there or the school code. It will populate that. Once you do that, it is sent to the SMC financial aid office in 3 to 5 business days. Okay? If there's a mistake, whereas when you apply for a FAFSA or your DREAM Act application and your name is completely different than what we have on file when you applied at SMC, or your date of birth, or if you have a social security number, if anything is different, it's not going to correspond, it's not going to correlate, and it won't be received by the SMC Financial Aid Office. Even if you completed your application, it won't correspond. So if you completed your FAFSA or your DREAM Act application and SMC Financial Aid Office hasn't received it within 3 to 5 business days, contact them as soon as possible. That's the first requirement, okay, for part of SMC Promise. First requirement is financial aid. You don't have to qualify for any type of financial aid, but we just need to have it on file, okay? That's pretty straightforward. Anything you'd like to add to that portion, Angela?
No, thank you.
You're welcome. One thing I want to emphasize is um, complete your financial aid as soon as possible. We need to receive it before that semester, right? But for this upcoming academic year, which is academic year is summer, fall, winter, and spring. I'm talking about the upcoming summer, fall, winter, and spring. Summer 26, fall 26, winter 27, and spring 27. On March 2nd, you want to apply your complete your application before March 2nd every year for financial aid. When you do that, there's another grant called the Cal Grant that potentially you may qualify for. So I always tell students, as soon as your parents file their taxes, your legal guardians or your parent or legal guardian, and if you do file taxes, do your FAFSA or DREAM Act application soon after because you have all the information is self-populated on the FAFSA or DREAM Act application. And then when you do that before March 2nd, you don't have to worry. It's going to be received for the next academic year, right? You don't have to press right before the semester. All right. In order to receive or become eligible for this is the first time and last time I'm going to say it here, California College Promise Grant, we call it a CCPG fee waiver because for some reason they decided to put the word promise in there. It used to be called a Board of Governors fee waiver. We call it now a CCPG fee waiver. Students must qualify through their FAFSA or DREAM Act application. What this is, when you apply for your FAFSA or your DREAM Act application, the SMC Financial Aid Office will automatically review your file to determine if you also qualify for a CCPG fee waiver. CCPG fee waiver will pay for your enrollment fees. If for some reason you don't meet the requirements for SMC Promise, and I'll go into that in a future slide, at least the CCPG fee waiver will pay for your enrollment fees or your classes. So that's a benefit of that. So complete your SMC Promise. First requirement is financial aid. SMC Financial Aid Office must receive your 2025-2026 FAFSA or DREAM Act application for this spring semester. Okay? Let's move on to the next slide, Angela, if you don't have anything input. Nope. Perfect. All right. So this student here, we're looking at the same student. We know they're eligible, right? And they got the green check mark and they're eligible, and they got the little brief overview up there is telling them that they still owe their enrollment student fees because they haven't completed the requirements below. We're going to focus on the first requirement. There's a yellow arrow. As you see on that section, there's a red box. That means hasn't been received or hasn't been completed. The next icon or area tells you incomplete in big bold red letters there. And then it gives you a brief overview. Complete your FAFSA or DREAM Act application before April 19th, 2026, where the red arrow is pointing. April 19th, 2026. Become very familiar with that date for this spring semester. That is the requirement deadline, okay? You need to complete your financial aid and be enrolled in your units by that date, okay? We'll go into enrolled units in a second, but we're focusing on financial aid. So this student hasn't completed their financial aid or hasn't been received by the SMC Financial Aid Office. Okay. Anything you'd like to add to this, Angela? That's a
No.
no. Thank you. Can we move on to the next slide? So the next slide is going to show a student, same student, but we have now received their financial aid. So we're going to focus once again where the yellow arrow is on that column. The green icon box, we received it. Next thing, it says completed. Santa Monica College has received your financial aid application. Pretty straightforward. All right. If for some reason it's not received before April 19th, that it will tell you on there. It will say we received it. SMC Financial Aid has received your financial aid application, but it has been received after, unfortunately, April 19th. But this student here, they're good. They're they're good. They're eligible, and they completed their financial aid so far. They still need to get into the enrollment. All right. So this is what it looks like when you have completed the financial aid requirement. Let's go on to the next slide, Angela, please. All right, let's talk about the unit requirement. We talked about the financial aid requirement, pretty straightforward. Let's talk about the unit requirement. This should be also straightforward. Students must enroll in 12 units or their DSPS RCL, reduced course load, that's what they call it. We call it a unit reduction just to keep it easy, by the SMC Promise requirement deadline and complete their units with passing grades. Passing grades are A, B, C, D, or P for pass for the eligibility to auto roll over to the future fall 2026 semester. We must receive your unit. You must be enrolled in your units by the requirement deadline. This requirement deadline for the spring 26 semester is April 19th. Okay. The summer and winter short-term semesters are optional to attend. Students that attend must complete both their SMC Promise requirements to receive benefits. All right, this is very tricky. We tell students that the summer and winter short-term semesters are optional to attend because the maximum amount of units you can enroll into is 8 units for the short-term semesters. Most students' unit requirement for the SMC Promise to receive the benefits is 12 units. So there are some students that are part of the DSPS program, and that's our third bullet point, that will potentially qualify for those short-term semesters. As I did stated in the previous slide, if you have a CCPG fee waiver, if you do decide to attend a short-term semester, at least if you have a CCPG fee waiver, that will pay for your classes or your enrollment fees. The third bullet point here says students requesting a DSPS RCL, reduced course load, unit reduction will need to contact the Center for Students with Disabilities to make an appointment. All right. So if you've had an IEP in elementary school, junior high, middle school, or at any point if you had one or you feel you have a learning disability, contact the DSPS office. Okay. Reach out to them. You'll meet with a counselor. Sometimes what transpires is when you meet with the DSPS office and a counselor can determine that a student's full-time requirement could be less than 12 units, right? If they have a learning disability. For example, let's say I'm a student, I had an IEP in high school. I check in with the DSPS office. I say I'm eligible for SMC Promise. I've opted in. I completed my financial aid, but I meet with a DSPS counselor. They determine my full-time equivalent is 6 units instead of 12 units. They reach out to the SMC Promise team, and what we do is on the back end, we enter that unit requirement in the system so it reflects on your SMC Promise Coursera Connect, and we'll show you in a future slide what that looks like. That's a benefit, and they also have a lot of other benefit and resources at the DSPS office. So if you've had an IEP or you feel you have a learning disability, please check in with them. Once again, anything you'd like to add to this, Angela? One?
The DSPS office is right across from the Welcome Center desk at the SSC, at Student Services Center.
Perfect. On the first floor of the main campus at the SSC building. Thank you,
Mhm.
Angela. Very important information. So we're going to look at, now we're going to focus on the unit requirements. So this is the same student or a similar student, right? We know they're eligible because they've opted in. We know they completed their financial aid. We're going to focus on their units enrolled. Where the yellow arrow is pointing is the last section there. They have once again, the red icon box. Red means, whoa, pay attention, something's wrong here, or it's a stop. Um, Enrolled units, it says incomplete, big writing there, all right? And then it gives the brief overview. This student is currently enrolled in 9 out of the required 12 units. Please enroll in the required number of units by April 19th, 2026, and complete with passing grades. Once again, the requirement deadline for this spring 2026 semester is April 19th, 2026. All right. So both requirements need to be met by that date. You can meet them before. We like students to meet those requirements prior to actually the payment deadline for the semester. For example, this payment deadline for the spring, I believe was January 19th. If you do so, then you don't have to pay out of pocket, right? but we'll go into refunds in a future slide. So we're trying to avoid a lot of other stuff going on. So we try to encourage students to complete the requirements early before the semester begins. So this student here is 9 out of 12 units, and they have to enroll in those units by April 19th to have their fees paid out for this spring semester. Anything like to add to this, Angela? One.
No, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Let's look at a student who has completed it. Bam. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff going on here. We're going to first focus on the yellow arrow again. So as you see on the yellow column, on the yellow arrow column, now it's a green box, right? It's no longer red. It doesn't say incomplete anymore. In the next section, it says completed. And then it gives a brief overview. You are currently enrolled in 14 out of the required 12 units. Please enroll in the required number of units by April 19, 2026 and complete with passing grades. So once again, it gives the student the reminder, maintain or stay enrolled in 12 or more units by April 19th, 2026. If you do so, those are both requirements are met, then your fees will be paid for this spring 2026 semester. This student is enrolled in 14 out of 12. As long as the student is enrolled in 12 or more, SMC Promise will pay. So you can be enrolled in 13, 14, 15, 16. I think that's the maximum you get enrolled into, but if you meet with a counselor, you can enroll in more. SMC Promise will pay for all of it. Okay. Now we're going to focus where the blue arrow is under the main eligibility section. When you're meeting both requirements, this is the main icon you're going to get. You're going to get that badge. We call it a badge. It's that circle, blue circle, yellow, green check mark says SMCP. When you get that badge, that means you're meeting both of the requirements below. All right. And then you're still eligible. And then the message states, congratulations, you're a part of the SMC Promise for this spring. You do not owe any fees so long as you complete your required units with passing grades. You also qualify for an SMC Promise book voucher. This student qualifies for a book voucher, and we're going to show you future slides what that looks like on the Coursera Connect. Once you meet both requirements, you should receive a fee postponement. So this student is receiving a fee postponement until June 16, 2026. That's the end of the semester for this spring semester. So once you meet those requirements, that's one of the benefits of the SMC Promise. You get a fee postponement. All right. So that's pretty much straightforward. So let's move on to a next slide. The next slide is for a student. Bam, same thing. But this student has a unit reduction through DSPS. So we're going to focus once again on the yellow arrow. This student has a green box with a check mark, completed, and the message states you are currently enrolled in 3 out of the required 3 units. Please enroll in the required required number of units by April 19th, 2026 and complete with passing grades. So this student's full-time enrollment requirement is 3 units, right? They met with the DSPS office. The counselor determined their full-time requirement is not 12 units, but 3 equivalent. They reach out to us. We manually enter it. It's in the system reflecting on their Coursera Connect. Once again, all your information for SMC Promise is on your Coursera Connect. But at any point, if you have a question, always email us. welcomecenter@smc.edu. That's one word put together. Include your name and your ID number when you do send an email, okay? We're going to roll back up to the top here. We're going to focus where the blue arrow is. This student, they have a unit reduction right through DSPS. They're getting that badge. What does that badge mean? They're meeting both of the requirements. They're financial aid and they're enrolled in their units. Once again, it gives the congratulation message. They don't owe any fees so long as they complete the required units with passing grades. This student also qualifies for a book voucher, and they have that fee postponement until June 16, 2026, which is the end of this semester. So it covers you, right? It covers you. But the important thing is to meet both the requirements, stay enrolled by April 19th for your units so you can get paid out. That's what transpires. If you meet your both requirements and you stay enrolled in your unit requirement by that date for the spring semester, once again, April 19th, 2026, your fees will be paid for. If you decide, let me take a step back. At any point, if you add or drop classes, always speak with your academic counselor or your special program counselor before you do so. All right. There are some students that will drop before the requirement deadline and you're not going to be able to find another class to add. Then you're going to have to pay for your fees for this semester, right? If you're not meeting the unit requirement at the requirement deadline. Okay. You can drop after the requirement deadline and your fees will still be paid for by SMC Promise for this spring semester. We have some examples on regain eligibility in future slides that cover the example I just gave. Anything like to add to this, Angela?
No, thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's talk about the SMC Promise benefits. We're going to go into a slide. It's going to cover the whole information or all of the information about the SMC Promise benefits. All right. In order to receive the SMC Promise benefits, for the spring 2026 semester, students must meet their SMC Promise requirements by the deadline of what? Yes, we all know it, Angela. It's April 19th, 2026 for the spring semester, okay? If you meet those both requirements that we just went over, we guided you through what to see, look for on your SMC Promise Coursera Connect, completed the financial aid requirement, enrolled in the unit requirement, stayed enrolled by April 19th, you get the following benefits. Your enrollment fees or your classes will be paid for. Your student fees will also be paid for. If you combine those two, if you're enrolled in 12 units, that's almost $600. I believe it's $552 if you're enrolled in 12 units. But once again, if you're enrolled in more units, that will also pay for your fees if you meet the requirements by that deadline. All right. It'll pay for as many units as you want to take, as you can enroll into. You receive a fee postponement for the current and future terms. So as you saw in the screenshots we were sharing from the Coursera Connect, a student that got the badge, which is there on top, and met both of the requirements because they got the badge because they met both of the requirements. You saw on some of those that had the badge that said you have an SMC Promise fee postponement until June, whatever the date was, 16th, 2026, I believe, which is the last day of the spring semester. So you get a fee postponement for the current semester and also for the future semester. Why is it important that you get a fee postponement for the future semester? Because for this spring semester, let's say I'm enrolled in part of SMC Promise, I'm meeting both requirements. I'm enrolled in my unit requirement. We received my financial aid. SMC Financial Aid has received it by April 19th. I get priority enrollment for the future terms. Number 3 on this list, priority enrollment. That means I get to enroll on the first day of enrollment, right? I may get a different time. Everybody gets different time and days, but I get to enroll before everybody else, right? So going back to why is it important to get a fee postponement? Because you start enrolling in May, which is still during the spring semester for the future fall 2026 semester, right? So if I meet the requirements by April 19th, I get an automatic fee postponement for the future fall, and I can feel comfortable enrolling in my future fall 26 semester without having to worry about paying for fees in the fall. I can juggle class, add, drop, do all the stuff, right? And I won't have to worry about getting dropped for non-payment in the future fall 2026 semester. That's why that fee postponement is really important. You get a potential refund, okay? So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say I'm a student for this spring semester. I'm enrolled in 12 units, which is my unit requirement. I've opted in. I'm eligible for SMC Promise, but my financial aid hasn't been completed. I haven't completed it. All right. The payment deadline is January 19th. I don't want to get dropped from my classes, so I pay out of pocket. I pay out of pocket from my classes, right? I complete my financial aid after I paid. My financial aid is now received by the SMC Financial Aid Office. On April 19th, I'm enrolled in my unit requirement of 12 units or more, and SMC has received my 2025-2026 FAFSA or DREAM Act application. I qualify for a refund. All right, I will get refunded for the fees that I paid for this semester out of pocket. That refund is usually processed and is received towards the end of the spring semester, but you get a refund. There is a Bank Mobile, which is electronic banking. If you like to do that, they electronically refund your money in the initial method of payment. Or you can get a hard check where they'll mail you a check to your mailing address or they'll call you to come pick it up. That's how a refund works. All right. There's other benefits up to $3,000 for an SMC Promise book voucher. You must also qualify for a CCPG. $3,000, that's for an entire year. We will touch on that in a future slide. You get a reduced parking pass from $50 to $18. That's 50 to 18. Must also qualify for a CCPG fee waiver. You get a complimentary Go Pass Metro Tap card for the current semester, and that's a great resource to help you get around town. And your second year of SMC Promise will automatically roll over as long as you meet and complete the requirements. So the way is SMC Promise is for potentially 2 years. It's fall, spring, that's 1 year. Next fall and spring is the second year. Once again, the short-term semesters are optional to attend. Summer and winter are the short-term optional semesters. If you do attend those semesters, you're going to have to meet both of the requirements, financial aid, and enroll in your unit requirement to receive the benefits. Otherwise, you're going to have to pay out of pocket for those semesters, unless you have a CCPG fee waiver that'll at least pay for your classes. All right. Most students are not going to qualify for the short-term semesters for the SMC Promise benefits. There's a lot of information there, but I think it's encapsulated, and we give you some examples. It's pretty straightforward. Angela, is there anything you'd like to add to this?
No, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to grab a quick drink of water. Go ahead and move to the next slide.
Okay.
All right. So we did talk about the CCPG fee waiver. This kind of goes in more in depth about it. So the CCPG fee waiver covers enrollment fees only. Enrollment fees are your classes and is processed via the SMC Financial Aid Office. Qualifications usually based on California residency, AB 540, status, government benefits, income, and/or you submit a FAFSA Dream Act application. So once again, basically the SMC Financial Aid Office, when you submit your FAFSA or Dream Act application, they'll review your file to determine if you also qualify for a CCPG, right? That is great because if for some reason you don't meet both of the requirements for the SMC Promise, so um, at least the CCPG fee waiver will pay for your enrollment or your classes. You will have to pay out of pocket for your student fees and your books, material, supplies, right? But at least that resource is there. Once again, it pays for your enrollment fees, which are your classes, and for potentially an entire academic year. So whenever you submit your FAFSA or DREAM Act application, once again, that is when and it's received by the SMC Financial Aid Office. That is when they start reviewing your file to determine if you qualify for grants, if you qualify for anything else, and includes the CCPG fee waiver. So when I was telling you or informing you earlier about completing your FAFSA or DREAM Act application once a year before March 2nd, so let's say for this upcoming March 2nd, my parents have completed their taxes. I don't work, but they've completed their taxes. I'm going to complete my 2026, 2027 FAFSA for the next academic year, next summer, fall, winter, and spring. Okay? Their taxes are done. I complete my FAFSA. I include SMC on my FAFSA. Their information is sent to SMC. This upcoming summer, they determine and fall, winter, and spring that I qualify for a CCPG, they being the SMC Financial Aid Office. That's how you can potentially qualify for an entire year of a CCPG fee waiver. There are some times where a student doesn't submit their FAFSA or DREAM Act application, or it's not reviewed until, let's say, I just graduated high school in 2025. I didn't attend the summer. I attended a fall semester. And at that point, I submitted my FAFSA right before fall. SMC Financial Aid determined that I have a CCPG fee waiver, so it doesn't go retroactive to summer. Even if I did attend, it won't be retroactive and I won't get a refund. That's how it usually works, okay? There's no unit minimum or requirement. You can enroll in half a unit. You can enroll as many units as you like, and it'll cover you. The CCPG fee waiver will cover you. Once again, does not cover your student fees. It covers for your classes, which is half the battle, right? Classes cost a lot. SMC Promise is not dependent on student financial aid, financial need, and covers enrollment and student fees potentially for up to 2 years. So that's the difference between the CCPG fee waiver. The CCPG fee waiver, when they review your FAFSA or DREAM Act application, they will review all your financial need to find out if you have extra need, and then they'll award you this if they find out you do. For the SMC Promise, if you're eligible, you're meeting the basic eligibility criteria that we talked about in the beginning, right? If you're meeting that and you opt in, you just submit your FAFSA. You don't need to qualify for financial aid, and you enroll in your unit requirements. You're meeting both requirements by the requirement deadline of April 19th for this spring semester. Your enrollment and student fees will be paid for. All right, that's the difference. That's how it works. Anything you'd like to add to this, Angela, before you move on to the next slide?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. All right, let's talk about an SMC Promise book voucher. So this is for a student that must be eligible, right? And they've opted in and they're meeting all their SMC Promise requirements and also receiving a CCPG fee waiver. Okay. The formula is they're part of SMC Promise. They're meeting both requirements, financial aid enrolled in units, and they get that little badge up there, right? The little blue badge, yellow and white, check mark, SMCP. Plus, if they're receiving a CCPG fee waiver via the financial aid profit process, you qualify for an SMC Promise book voucher. That's the formula, straightforward. It's up to $3,000 for the academic year. The way it's broken down is $1,000 for fall, $1,000 for the spring, $500 for summer, $500 for winter. Once again, the short-term summer and winter sessions are optional to attend. If you do attend and you want to receive the benefits, you have to enroll in your unit requirement. Most students' unit requirement is 12 units. There are some students that are part of DSPS where their full-time unit requirement is less than 12 units. They will qualify for these short-term semesters and the benefits. Okay. The SMC Promise book voucher is automatically issued. All right. So if you're getting SMC Promise and you're getting a CCPG fee waiver via the financial aid process, you automatically qualify for an SMC Promise book voucher, right? Is you can access it through the slingshot, which is there, the link. You can access it through our SMC Promise website, through the book voucher that's on there about book voucher. It's slingshot, okay? You can access it through the SMC bookstore link. They have that there too, all right? It covers for your books, materials, and supplies. Let's say for this spring semester, you qualify for a book voucher. That's $1,000 for books, material, and supplies. The way I explain it to students, or I try to encourage students, is if you do qualify for an SMC Promise book voucher, I always recommend students to go to the actual bookstore at Santa Monica College on the main campus. The reason I tell students is because it's a one-stop shop. You can have your books when you log in a Slingshot. You log in. You don't have to do anything. What they do is they review which books you qualify for, and they automatically mail them. You can have them mailed directly to your address or directly to the SMC bookstore on the main campus. I tell students have them mailed directly to the SMC bookstore on the main campus. The reason being is while you're there, you can also use your book voucher you don't have to buy them, to access materials and supplies. You need a periodic table, you need a calendar, paper, pencil, pens, things of that nature. You do it all at once. They can mail you your books for the book voucher, but they will not mail you materials and supplies. That's the reason we tell you. You potentially will qualify for a refund if you pay for out of pocket. And the way that works is, let's say I'm a student, I'm part of SMC Promise, I'm eligible. My financial aid has been received, right? I also qualify for a CCPG fee waiver, but I am not enrolled in my unit requirement. All right. I'm only enrolled in 9 out of 12 units. What does this tell me? I don't qualify for a book voucher because I'm not meeting the SMC Promise requirements. Even though I have a CCPG fee waiver, I'm not meeting both of the requirements. I'm not fully in SMC Promise. I'm just eligible. All right. The semester's about to start. I go on that Slingshot website or go to the SMC bookstore and I buy my books, material, and supplies out of pocket. I use my own money and I buy them. All right. I am able to add another class before the semester begins. Now I'm enrolled in 12 out of 12 units, which my unit requirement is 12 units. Now I qualify for an SMC Promise book voucher, but I already bought and paid for my books, material, and supplies on that Slingshot. I bought them through there at the bookstore. I have my receipts. I contact the bookstore. I show my receipts. I will get a refund for the books that I paid for out of pocket. All right. If I went to buy my books, material, supplies through Amazon or through any other portal or any other outside entity, the SMC Promise book voucher will not cover you. It only can be used on that Slingshot. So if you are going to pay out of pocket, I'd always recommend purchase your materials, books, and supplies at the SMC bookstore. Hopefully that all makes sense. Angela, is there anything you'd like to add to this?
Slingshot is also located, they have a little setup there next to the bookstore. So if you have any questions, then you can go directly to them and they have a representative there.
Perfect. On the main campus. They're right in the middle of the campus. SMC bookstore and Slingshot. Thank you, Angela. Appreciate that. All right, so this is what a student looks like on their Coursera Connect, SMC Promise. Once again, we look at the blue arrow. They got the badge. They're eligible. Congratulations this spring. You also qualify for an SMC Promise book voucher. It tells you all your information on the brief overview, right? So this student gets a book voucher. If you scroll down, we're going to show the next screen. We're going to scroll down on that Coursera Connect. It's going to show you what it looks like at the bottom. All right. It'll first say, after you have your SMC Promise information, the next two things it'll show is CCPG fee waiver. And it tells you all the information. It tells you they're eligible. I qualify for a CCPG fee waiver via the financial aid process. The enrollment fees will be paid for if you do not meet the SMC Promise requirements. It tells you right there, straightforward. That is great news. We're going to focus on the yellow arrow now under the SMC Promise book voucher. Once again, they get a green box, check mark, eligible. You qualify for an SMC Promise book voucher at the SMC bookstore during the following period. It gives you the dates and deadlines there. February 2nd through April 30th. That's when the SMC book voucher is available and issued during that time frame. All right. Thank you, Angela. Anything you'd like to add to this one?
No, thank you.
Thank you. So the next slide is going to show a student that does not receive a CCPG. They're meeting requirements, but as you can see, they're not getting the CCPG. They're ineligible. You don't qualify for a fee waiver through the financial aid process. If you have questions, contact the financial aid. We're going to focus on the yellow arrow under the SMC Promise book voucher. Red box, ineligible. And it gives you the formula there. Only students that are meeting the SMC Promise requirements and also receiving a CCPG fee waiver will qualify for a book voucher. Tells you straightforward right there, okay? That's what it'll look like. So that's pretty much it for the SMC Promise book voucher. Let's move on to see what we got next. All right, how to regain eligibility. These are examples, pretty straightforward. Let's dive into the examples. All right, the basics. Let's talk about the basics first, right? Basics of regain eligibility. Any student who has opted in and is still within their 2 years of SMC Promise eligibility and has fallen out, didn't meet the requirements for a semester, only needs to enroll in their unit requirement or DSPS unit reduction for the future semester prior to that semester's requirement deadline to regain eligibility. All right, pretty straightforward. Let's say I'm a student, I don't meet my requirements for this spring semester. All I have to do, and I'm still eligible next fall 26, all I have to do is enroll my 12 units if that's my unit requirement. And I regain eligibility. No need to make up units anymore. In the past, you had to make up units in the short-term semester. No more of that. All right? Students must still meet both their financial aid and unit requirement to receive the benefits of the SMC Promise if they do regain eligibility. Pretty straightforward. You got to have both requirements in, meeting them at the requirement deadline to get the benefits. Let's look at these examples. All right, example one. The student's financial aid requirement is completed, right? They're eligible. They've opted in. They got it. Financial aid is green, completed, and they're enrolled in their unit requirement or their DSPS unit reduction for the spring semester through the requirement deadline of April 19th. What happens on that day? Their fees to get paid out for, right? They don't have to worry about any of the fees. At the end of the semester, this student does not complete their unit requirement or DSPS unit reduction with passing grades. The student was going to fall out at the end of the spring semester, right? So this student, let's say my unit requirement is 12 units. I'm enrolled in 12 units. My financial aid on April 19th. They're good to go. I get paid out for spring. At the end of the semester, I only completed 9 out of 12 units. I didn't pass one of my classes. All I have to do is enroll. As it says here, the student just enrolls in their unit requirement or their DSPS unit reduction in the future fall 2026 semester. I enroll in 12 units for the future fall before that deadline, the requirement deadline for the fall, which is in October, as it shows there, 25th, 2026. Then I automatically regain eligibility for the fall. Pretty straightforward. All right. This is a great example because you meet the requirements on the 19th. And let's say I'm enrolled in 12 units and my financial aid is in on the 19th, but I decided to drop a class 2 weeks after April 19th. My fees are still paid for the spring. I'm still good. It's always highly recommended you speak with your academic counselor or your specialized counselor in the area if you're going to drop or add any classes. If you are going to drop classes before that deadline, you're going to have to pay for fees, right? And we'll show you an example number two. Let's go to example number two. You can always reach out to us, the Welcome Center at smc.edu. At any point, if you have questions, be proactive about staying enrolled in your classes. You can also visit our website. Our website has all this information, has all these examples, and has everything, dates and deadlines on there. Or you can visit your Coursera Connect. It has all the dates and deadlines and it's real time. All right, let's look at example number two. Student financial aid requirement is completed, right? They're opted in, they're eligible, their financial aid is in, but is not enrolled in their unit requirement or the DSPS unit reduction for the spring semester at the requirement deadline. We know what the date is, April 19th, 2026. What does that mean? The student will need to pay for their fees for this spring semester and will fall out of the SMC Promise. All right. So this student, let's say I'm a student, I'm part of DSPS. My full term unit requirement is 6 units. I'm only enrolled in 3 units by April 19th. All right. But my financial aid is in. That means I need to pay for my fees for this spring semester because I didn't meet the requirements. Okay. And I will fall out of SMC Promise. The good news is, it's very simple. The student then enrolls in their unit requirement or DSPS unit reduction for the future fall 2026 semester prior to that requirement deadline of the fall. The student will automatically regain eligibility for the fall 2026 semester. Once again, let's say I'm the student. I had to pay for this spring semester because I wasn't enrolled in my 6 unit requirement by April 19th. All I have to do is enroll in 6 units for the future fall before that deadline, which is October 25. I regain eligibility. I make sure my financial aid requirement is also met. Pretty straightforward. Okay. That's how regain eligibility works. Let's look at the last example, example number 3. All right. The student's financial aid requirement is incomplete. All right. So I've opted in, I'm eligible. The first requirement, financial aid, it says red box, incomplete for the spring 2026 semester at the requirement deadline of April 19, 2026. So I can be enrolled in my unit requirement. Let's say my unit requirement is 12 units. But if my financial aid isn't in, that's one of the requirements. I'm going to have to pay out of pocket for this spring 2026 semester. That's what it says. And I will fall out of the spring semester at the end of the semester at that requirement deadline. Okay. Good news is all the student has to do is enroll in their unit requirement or their DSPS unit reduction for the future fall 26 semester prior to the requirement deadline, and the student will automatically gain eligibility for the fall 2026 semester. Keep in mind, even though, let's say I'm the student, I'm not enrolled in 12, I'm enrolled in 12 units. My financial aid is not in by April 19th. I have to pay out of pocket for this spring semester. It will tell you on your Coursera Connect SMC Promise. I enroll in 12 units for the future fall 26. I regain eligibility, but I still have to complete my financial aid for that prospective academic year. For next fall is 2026, 2025, 2026 financial aid. Okay. Once again, students' financial aid must be also completed and received prior to October 25 deadline for the fall 2026 semester. Pretty straightforward in these 3 examples. That should encompass everybody and all the different ones. So let's move on to, I believe the next thing is special consideration. All right. This is a very unique thing. Most students here won't have to apply for special consideration. This is for students who receive an ineligible status because they were never eligible for SMC Promise because they're not a first-time college student and things of that nature. But the way it works is all you have to do is send an email to the Welcome Center at smc.edu in the subject line, write special consideration. It's a review process. It's not guaranteed that the student will gain eligibility, but the file will be reviewed. All right. So mostly, once again, it's students that do not meet the basic SMC Promise eligibility criteria. They won't get an opt-in message. These are students that have to pursue the special consideration process. And our email is there if you have if you're going to do a special consideration. But most everybody that was invited here would be a regain eligibility if for some reason you fall out. But at any point, if you have any questions, once again, email us. Include your SMC ID number and your name. That's it for this slide, Angela. Let's look at what it would look like on a student. This is for a student that's ineligible. The first part of the SMC Promise status, it just gives you that you're not eligible and it tells you what semester, contact the Welcome Center. If you ever get that message, you can, it doesn't say anything about regain eligibility, just contact us. Most students here will get a regain eligibility message. All right. Let's move forward. All right, so our contact information is here. Welcome Center smc.edu. There's our phone number and our website. Everything's on our website. All right. Everything is on our website. Simplified, short fashion. We correspond all the terminology that we use on our Coursera Connect. Everything's on your Coursera Connect, SMC Promise. We utilize the same words on our presentations. That's on our website. That's on your Coursera Connect. So we keep it all uniform and simplified. All right. So that leads us to telling you congratulations. Welcome to SMC Promise. Good luck, SMC Promise students. And now is the time for questions and answers. All right. So thank you, Angela. You don't have to share anymore. We're just going to go ahead. If anybody has a question, they can put it in the chat. Thank you, Angela, one, for including all these links um, on the chat that would assist the students based on the slides that we were presenting. So those are all these slides. If you want further resources or further information, that we were discussing in these slides. So if anybody has a question, if you don't want to put it in the general chat, you can raise your hand at this point and we will answer your question. So exciting. There are students that may have the same question as you. So if you're brave enough just to ask the question, usually that opens the floodgates and other people start answering and giving more questions and we provide answers. This is a lot easier than writing emails back and forth and phone calls. So right now is a great opportunity to ask a question. So I see a question here. Where can I go to see what kind of classes I can catch up to 12 units and meet up with that goal? So I'm assuming that you're eligible for SMC Promise, you've opted in, but you're missing your unit requirement, right? You should meet with your academic counselor, or if you're part of a specialized program, EOPNS, Black or Adelante program, meet with that counselor and ask for assistance. Tell them you want to add more classes. There are some classes that are available that they're going to close because nobody's adding them. So if it fits your schedule, add into those classes. If it fits your academic or personal goals also would be more important. So that's my input is contact a counselor, academic counselor, your specialized counselor to get assistance enrolling in more classes. All right. Hopefully that answers your question. If not, throw another question in the chat. All right. Next question. Great question. When I sign into Slingshot, it says I have a bookstore balance of 248. Have you used your SMC book voucher? They keep in mind, if you do, you're welcome. Keep in mind that they automatically process your SMC Promise book voucher, right? So if you're enrolled, let's say in 12 units, you qualify for a book voucher. They look at the classes. You can log into Slingshot and you're going to see the classes and which books or material supplies are recommended. They automatically mail those to your house. The books for sure, but the materials supplies you can utilize those at the SMC bookstore on the main campus. That's why I always inform students if you do qualify for a book voucher, have them your books mailed if you can delivered directly to the SMC bookstore on the main campus, so you can go there and pick up your books and also pick up materials and supplies. So what I'm assuming is that you used about 750 something dollars towards your books, right, through the book voucher, and you have a balance of 248 to use towards materials and supplies. Unfortunately, the Welcome Center doesn't have access to financial aid programs or to the SMC bookstore. So we cannot tell you if they've used any of those the book voucher and how much. So you haven't actually used any of the money from the book voucher, right? But once again, the SMC Promise book voucher, when you're enrolled in your classes, they automatically process your book voucher, right? You don't actually have to go in and say, I want to use my book voucher towards these books, right? They automatically see which classes you're enrolled into and which books are needed for those classes, and they apply the book voucher towards those books. Does that make sense? So you don't actually have to you don't have to select, which is can be quite let's see confusing, right? Because you don't have any say so on which books you want or not. It's automatically processed through that Slingshot or the SMC bookstore. So once again, if you have a book voucher, you don't have to do anything. It's automatically processed. They look at your schedule, they look at the classes, and they determine what books are needed for those classes based on what your professors want, and they automatically mail you those books and charge the SMC Promise book voucher. Does that make sense, Kayla? If not, feel free to ask another question. That's correct. That is correct. So the rest of the money, the balance of $248, is what you have left over. So if you want to go into the SMC bookstore and say, hey, I need a periodic table, I need a compass, I need pens, papers, pencils, whatever it is, you have a balance of $248 to utilize towards materials and supplies. I would recommend going in person. They can look at your book, your classes, and they will help you determine if there's any materials and supplies needed for those classes, and or if you just want to buy your own stuff, right? So yes. So it says underneath it says pay balance. So this is the money they give me. Why are they asking? So based on what you're telling me, I have to look at your file because I'm assuming on what you're saying is that you qualify for an SMC Promise book voucher. All right. So when we did the slideshow, the formula is if you're part of SMC Promise and you're meeting the requirements, you get that little badge, right? If you get that badge, plus you're receiving a CCPG fee waiver via the financial aid process, those two put together, you qualify for an SMC Promise book voucher. Okay? If you're not part of SMC Promise, yes, you have the badge and the CCPG. Okay, so then you are getting an SMC Promise book voucher. You don't owe any money. All right? Maybe you went over $1,000. Once again, I don't know because I don't have access to the SMC bookstore slingshot. But if they're asking you to pay 248 out of pocket, maybe you went over the $1,000 that were allocated. So unfortunately, once again, you're gonna have to contact the SMC bookstore directly and ask them to give them your SMC ID number, your name, tell them you qualify for a book voucher, and you want to know what your status is. If you owe the $248, or you are owed $248, or you are left, excuse me, in your SMC Promise balance $248 to use towards books, material, and supplies. I'm sorry. Hopefully that answers your question.
I got it. I'll give her the
Yeah,
email.
yeah. Thank you. You are welcome. We're glad we clarified it. That would have took a little bit writing that and showing you screenshots of your SMC Promise Coursera Connect. So it's always good that students that do attend these, we can verbally discuss this information, and it makes it a lot quicker. Thank you, Angela. She just provided you the bookstore and their contact information. Once again, contact them. Say, hey, I'm part of SMC Promise. I qualify for a book voucher. I'm just double checking. Do I still have any monies in my balance in my book voucher, or do I owe money? So just to clarify that, okay? We don't have, you are welcome. You're more than welcome. Once again, we don't have access to that information, so unfortunately we cannot break down what balance is what. Great question. All right. Any other questions here? All right. Those are great questions. We thank you for attending the SMC Promise Online Information Seminar. We are going to have some more of these probably offered in the second week of school. If you have further questions or you want to go more in depth, second week of this spring semester, excuse me. If you have further questions, you can attend those. We also have two more, usually right before the SMC Promise requirement deadline for the spring semester. We go a little bit more into depth of regain eligibility, or we really focus on regain eligibility. It's a little bit shorter, but we just focus on regain eligibility. Students that usually attend are not enrolled in the unit requirement or missing one of the requirements, financial aid. We reach out to them and we ask them to attend so we can show them what to look for and inform them what the dates and deadlines and what may transpire, as we did show in the regain eligibility examples. Well, if there's no further questions, that would be it for this SMC Promise Information Seminar. Thank you for being here. It really matters. It really makes it easier for us to explain and important, and for you to understand so you can focus on your academic goals, and we do the lifting of paying your classes, book vouchers, and regain eligibility and all the other benefits. So on behalf of Miss Angela Lee, one, and myself, Josh Casillas. Thank you for attending the SMC Promise Information Seminar. You can always reach out to us at the Welcome Center. Welcome Center, one word, at smc.edu or call us 310-434-8101. Thank you and have a good night.